Well, good morning. Welcome to the vlog. Hi, I'm Jim from Whatnot Adventures, and I'm glad you're here. I hope you're having a good day. We're having a good day here. Well, today we are in Abbeville, South Carolina, at a spot in history that I think is interesting, and so I thought I would come up and check it out. I'm standing on Secession Hill. This place is where South Carolinians came and gathered, voted, and decided to secede from the Union prior to the start of the Civil War. So I thought we'd walk around and look at the monuments and the plaques and see what we shall see. There are a lot of memorials and signs here, but I'm just doing a general overall pan of the area to show you before we get into all this. This first plaque or sign, Secession Hill, one of the first organized mass meetings held here on November the 22nd, 1860, to launch South Carolina's secession from the Union. Judge A.G. McGrath of Charleston urged immediate action on the part of South Carolina at any and every hazard, followed by General M.L. Bonham, Congressman McGowan, Major Armistead, Burt, and others. Resolutions unanimously adopted favoring secession of the state. Committee of 20 appointed nominees: Edward Noble, John C. Calhoun, Thomas Thompson, John H. Wilson, and D.L. Wardlaw, to attend the December 17, 1860 convention. 1 month later, South Carolina became the first state to secede. Wow. And I guess Abbeville County Historical Society has different stops through the town. And this is their stop number 7. And over here, kind of a historical marker. Secession Hill, on November the 22nd, 1860, a mass meeting on this site was one of the first held in the South after Abraham Lincoln's election as president on November 6. A procession from the town square, numbering 2,000 to 3,000, made its way to the grove here, near the Greenville and Columbia Railroad Depot. Many in the crowd, many in the crowd wore palmetto cockades as bands played. Militia and volunteer companies marched with flags and banners, and some units were even fired cannon salutes. And it's continued on the other side here. Andrew G. McGrath, arguing the time for action has arrived, was typical of most speakers who called for South Carolina's immediate secession from the Union. The meeting passed resolutions urging secession and recommended delegates to represent Abbeville District at the Secession Convention in December. This hill, then known as Magazine Hill, for a powder magazine here, was soon renamed Secession Hill and has been known by that name since 1860. Wow. All right. The first monument I want to show you is this one with this obelisk. Let's read this. United Daughters of the Confederacy. This monument is also dedicated to the women of the UDC of yesterday and today, who worked so arduously and diligently since the war for Southern independence to place monuments across our Southland in honor and in memory of our Confederate heroes. They are responsible for most of the 200 monuments in our Palmetto State based on size and population. South Carolina has more Confederate monuments than any other state. The UDC ladies are, still today, educating the people about our Confederate ancestors' fight for independence. May God bless them, one and all. And on the back side of this tablet, this obelisk of this monument is the original obelisk of the first Confederate monument, which was placed on the square in 1906 and was damaged by fire the 28th of December, 1991. Only slight repair has been made to the damaged obelisk. The Confederate monument of the square today, placed there in 1996, is an exact replica of the original. The obelisk was deeded to the Secession Hill Memorial Trust by the Abbeville chapter of the UDC. Though it was damaged by fire and discarded, it once had the status of honoring the men of the South, but now it has the status of honoring the women of the South. May God save our Southland. And I'm going to pan up there. I think you'll see little brown spots if it goes around it. I think that's where there was some damage. Yeah, there's some up there too. Okay, and then this tablet, in honor of the women of the South, among those whom we are indebted in South Carolina, I have not yet alluded to that particular claim of gratitude which is due to the fair country women of the Palmetto State. They who have gone to the hospital to watch by the side of the sick, those who throng your wayside homes, who have nursed as if nursing was a profession, who have used their needle with the industry of sewing, women who have borne privation without a murmur, and who have given up fathers, sons, and husbands with more than Spartan virtue, because they called no one to witness and record the deed silently with all the dignity and grandeur of patriotism. They have made their sacrifices which, if written, would be surpassed by nothing in history. If all the acts of heroism and virtue of the women of the South could be transmitted to the future, it would present such a record as the world has never seen. All honor, then I say, to the ladies of the Palmetto State. Their gallantry is only different from that of their sons in this, that they deem it unfeminine to strike, and yet such is the heroism they have displayed, such the noble demeanor they have exhibited, that at the last moment, when trampled upon it became a necessity, they would not hesitate to strike the invader, a corpse at their feet. And that's from President Jefferson Davis, Columbia, South Carolina, 4 October, 1864. And on the back side of this tablet, in memory to the women of our South, the present condition of our country is sad enough to make any one of us to wish to leave it. But there is virtue and manhood in the country which may at an hour which not expected restored it to its liberties. The women of the South have never faltered. Their children will rise up to show how worthy their mothers were. President Davis to William Norris, 15 June 1870. The more I see of the Southern ladies, the more I hear of their actions, of their grand heroism, of their sacrifices, of their suffering, the more I am lost in astonishment. Words cannot express my admiration of them. The war could not have gone on without them. From the delicate lady to the hardy peasant wife, they have all sent without a murmur their husbands, sons, and those who hold nearest and dearest to the war. They have tilled the fields. They have clothed the troops. They have nursed them in the hours of sickness, and above all, they have prayed unceasingly to the great ruler of the universe, to the God of battles, to fight for them and theirs for liberty and freedom. And that's from an excerpt from 1863 letter, home of Henry W. Fieldman, an Englishman serving as a staff officer to General Beauregard. Well, that is some amazing monument to the ladies here, South Carolina, the Palmetto State. I am up above and behind the Women's Monument. And to my left here is this monument. Robert Boyd Hayes, born 14 February 1940. His ancestors were early settlers in the 1600s and helped create the colony state of South Carolina. His roots are deep in his Palmetto homeland. He had many ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War and several hundred who fought for Southern independence. He also had a tremendous love for our Dixieland. It took him 3.5 years to obtain Secession Hill in 2004 and about 15 years to clear the sacred ground. Clearing and maintaining Secession Hill was for him a labor of love. Most of his happiest hours were spent working on the hill. Very soon after purchasing this ground, he dreamed of having a monument to the women of the south on the hill. His dream was realized on 1st September 2023. His body is now a part of Secession Hill that he loves so well. So this must be his gravestone. Wow. Isn't that amazing? So he is laid to rest overlooking his hill, Secession Hill, and the monument that he worked so hard for to give to the women of South Carolina. Okay, there in the distance is the Women's Monument, the grave of Robert up there on the hill. And here, this wonderful monument. This stone marks the spot where the first secession speeches were made. Site of General Hampton's speech. After the South lost the War of Southern Independence, South Carolina, as other Southern states, were under Yankee rule for 12 years because the vote was denied the white man. Only carpetbaggers, scallywags, and blacks were allowed to vote. Gradually, our people regained their vote. Former Confederate General Wade Hampton was urged to run for governor in 1876 against the carpetbag governor Daniel Chamberlain of Massachusetts. On Saturday, September the 16th, General Hampton gave a campaign speech on this spot. The Abbeville Press and Banner stated that his speaker's platform was on the exact spot of the Secession Speaker's platform in 1860. Former Secretary of State of the CSA and later Confederate General Robert Toombs of Georgia attended. General Martin W. Gary and General Samuel McCowan of the Abbeville District were present. There were several thousand people, including hundreds of Hampton's red shirts, on this sacred ground that day. General Hampton became our governor, and the carpetbaggers fled our state. Many honorable people have tread this sacred ground, whose footprints have you tread in today. Wow. Isn't that something? All right. Moving on to what I think is the main big feature here at Secession Hill. Just a magnificent area. Look at all the bricks down here. Hope you can read some of these. Amazing. Kind of hard to read that. Let's see what else there is. In a statewide election on December the 6th, 1860, specifically called for by the South Carolina General Assembly, the people of South Carolina chose delegates for a convention to consider the question of succession. The right of a state to secede from the Union was understood by all of our nation's founders and each of the states which joined together to form the United States. The South Carolina Secession Convention began on December 17th, 1860 at the First Baptist Church in Columbia. Opened in prayer by Reverend James C. Furman of Greenville, the convention elected David F. Jameson of Barnwell District as convention president. Due to a confirmed case of smallpox in Columbia and fearing the possibility of an epidemic, the convention decided to relocate to Charleston. In the early morning hours of December 18th, the men boarded the train and arrived in Charleston that afternoon. The South Carolina Division, Sons of the Confederate Veterans, dedicates this monument to the men who represented the people of South Carolina Convention. Stalwarts in their communities, they were leaders in business, religion, medicine, law, education, and agriculture. No finer group of men has ever represented their state or its people. And here's the list of names. I believe they contributed in some form or fashion. All right, picking up where we left off. Arriving in Charleston from Columbia on the afternoon of December the 18th, 1860, the South Carolina Secession Convention met briefly in Institute Hall. A committee was assigned to draft an ordinance with John Ingalls of Charles appointed committee chairman. An ordinance was completed on December the 19th, and the convention met in St. Andrew's Hall on December the 20th to consider the ordinance. Shortly after 1 p.m., a roll call vote was taken, and the convention voted unanimously to adopt the South Carolina Ordinance of Secession. South Carolina was the first Southern state to secede from the Union, and the only one to do so unanimously. Signing of the ordinance took place in Institute Hall on the evening of December the 20th, 1860. Each of the men listed on this monument signed the South Carolina Ordinance of Secession. South Carolina had chosen, as it had been from 1776 to 1787, to once again be a sovereign and independent republic. James H. Adams, Robert W. Barnwell, and James L. Orr were appointed by the convention as ambassadors to the U.S. government to arrange for the existing relations of the parties and for the continued peace and anonymity between this Commonwealth and the government in Washington. So these were the gentlemen that signed that ordinance. Wow. That's amazing. And around this monument are these different benches. Rivers Bridge Camp, 842. They will not be forgotten. In honor of the men and women of the parish Mounted Rangers, St. James Parish presented Day, Goose Creek, South Carolina. Secession Camp number 4, Sons of the Confederate Veterans, Charleston, South Carolina. Lest we forget. Captain Eustace St. Pierre Bellinger, Bellinger's Company, 11th Regiment, South Carolina Infantry Militia. Stephen Len Douglas, fiercely devoted in preserving his family heritage and true history of the South, faithfully toiled 10 years to erect this edifice. In appreciation of Robert Hayes for securing, clearing, and maintaining Secession Hill for present and future generations. Army of Northern Virginia Sons of the Confederate Veterans, you should do your duty in all things. General Robert E. Lee. Sons of the Confederate Veterans, International Headquarters, Columbia, Tennessee. We built this monument together, dedicated to H. Albert Jackson, Chairman Emeritus, Signers Monument Committee, sponsored by SCV. Jack Millar, faithful and true Southern Carolinian, family, God, SCV, in memory. Confederate Heritage Trust, Charleston, South Carolina, may we never forget. In memory of the Weir family of Lawrence County, their service and sacrifice. In memory of Patricia Pat Blitz, South Carolina Division, Sons of the Confederate Veterans. And over here, at the base of the flagpole, Old Abbeville Camp number 39, Sons of the Confederate Veterans. So they have a place for 3 more flagpoles there. That's pretty nice. In memory and appreciation of James E. and Bernice H. Layden, who provided the funds to purchase this historic sacred ground, they loved their Southland. Wow. Well, that's something. It's part of our history. And I'm glad I was able to bring it to you today. So down the hill from that monument lies an unknown soldier. It says, here lies the body of the unknown Confederate soldier whose remains were placed here in 1865 from a train in the depot at the bottom of this hill. Died of smallpox, possibly from Alabama, and aged 30 years. Never forget the peoples for which he died for, Southern independence. Wow. Unknown soldier from the Confederate War. And here's his grave. folks, that was our visit today here at Secession Hill in Abbeville, South Carolina. It's part of our history of this nation. We've had our problems in the past. We have problems in the present. But we should never forget our history. At least we would probably repeat it. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at the various monuments and plaques here at Secession Hill. If you are in the area, maybe a local traveling through, stop by for a few minutes and just take a look. All right, folks, it's your turn. You know, go out and explore, find this, that, and the other, the whatnots in your life. And until next time, take care, be safe. Bye.